Mohammed Ali Kadivar is an associate professor of sociology and international studies at Boston College. He now joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. You've written comprehensive analysis of what might happen next, headlined "The Fantasy of Liberation by War." In it, you outline two possible paths for this war. One, regime collapse, or two, regime survival under external assault. Let's just talk about that, the possibilities of increased chaos. The record of foreign-imposed regime change is not ambiguous. It is grim in many cases. The probability of civil war more than doubles within a decade. Just walk us through, you know, what your thinking is here and what you expect.
Thank you for having me. So yes, there are two possible scenarios. One is regime collapse. This is what also Israeli and American politicians have announced as their goals. Without troops on the ground, this is an unlikely scenario. But let's say hypothetically it happens. It means the government in Tehran will collapse. But the first thing is that this doesn't mean that all the forces that support and fight for Islamic Republic are going to disappear. There are many Basij units, militias, revolutionary guards throughout the country, not just in barracks or police stations. They are in mosques, they are in houses, schools, and elsewhere. So regime collapse means these parts of at least these forces will remain. They will have access to arms, and given what we know about their ideology and their past record, they're not going to surrender. They probably will keep fighting. In addition, now we are talking about arming the Kurdish insurgents. There have been armed insurgents in Iran's Baluchistan, also in the Arab regions. They might also join, and then whoever else would receive arm from outside. So this is one possible scenario. These factions then will be fighting for dominance, or with, let's say, if there are American or Israeli forces in the country. The other scenario, which at least right now is more likely, is that the regime or some version of the regime will survive. Let's say their military capability will be reduced. They are militarily weaker. It doesn't mean that they would lose their capacity for coercion within the country. So right now, obviously, it's wartime conditions. The public spaces are under heavy surveillance. There are checkpoints everywhere. These moments of conflicts, we have seen what they do before in Iran. The major case in point is Iran-Iraq war that lasted for 18 years. What were the consequences? First was it just shut down all the mobilized sectors of Iranian civil society that were very mobilized after the 79 revolution up to 1981, when the regime used the context of war to shut them down. These conflicts also make the elites very cohesive. This is a feature of Iran. Iran is a post-revolutionary regime, a regime that has emerged out of these episodes of violent upheaval. The other regimes like this are Soviet Union, now it's China, it's Cuba, it's Algeria after the War of Independence. These have been a very resilient regime. This is well discussed within political science literature. These moments of violent upheaval bring these elites together, and this would reinforce it. Also, the Islamic Republic has held a high level of mobilization of its supporters, and right now, especially after death of Khamenei, their base is very energized, is very mobilized, and they are speaking about vengeance.
Can I ask you this? In terms of what the surviving officials of this regime are now saying, they are denying CNN reporting that there have been efforts to reach out to Washington through an intermediary country. Here's what the Deputy Foreign Minister of Iran said. Have a listen.
We haven't heard anything, and we have not conveyed any message to Americans because we are now defending ourselves. We are in a defensive mode, and what we are concentrating on is to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves. So no message is being sent, and we haven't received any message by America or by anybody else.
Well, they may call it a defensive mode. It certainly feels like an offensive mode if you're sitting where I am here in the Gulf and listening to the continued explosions from missile and drone interceptions that are going on as we speak here in Abu Dhabi. We've seen similar in Saudi, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Kuwait. I mean, this goes on. How long can they keep this up?
I mean, as long as they have missiles to shoot, and I think even your report and other reports suggested for now they have missiles and just warfare to continue. It's asymmetrical. Iran is receiving a lot more hit and damage than whatever it's doing to its targets. But their calculation is that they can outlast, they can absorb more pain than their adversaries. This is the calculation based on which they keep fighting. And I think for them, this is an existential fight. They are fighting for survival. So they just keep going as much as they can.
You've heard the Pentagon briefing yesterday. It is quite clear that at least the chairman of the Joint Chiefs has a military objective, and he laid that out very clearly. And that is that the next phase of this, and they talked about completing the next phase within a week. And if that's of the start, then we're talking about the next 72 hours could be very punishing on Iran. Talking about precision bombing inside the country. What do you genuinely believe Iranians can take at this point? And we've talked about what you think the regime, looks like, its posture at this point. To your mind, is there a sort of Delcy moment, as people are calling it, whereby there has been some sort of communication with elements of this regime by the CIA or others ahead of this war that President Trump can rely on and say, actually, we've got people on the inside, we know what's going on, we know how this is going to play out? Do you buy that?
That they communicate with the regime for a ceasefire or for I'm not sure what you were suggesting.
No, elements of the regime on a coup, effectively, a coup.
So a feature of these regimes, this revolutionary regime, is that they are very coup-proof. Like there hasn't been coups in Soviet Union, in China, in Algeria, Cuba, even Iran. This is mainly a speculation. The way these regimes have formed, they have already removed elements that would bring a coup. If anyone wants to do a coup, it's Revolutionary Guards, but Revolutionary Guards are fighting the war right now. So I don't think this is a realistic hypothesis about a coup.
Last question to you. Do you think, what sort of concern do you think those elements that do still exist who are running things in Iran, what sort of concern do you believe they'll have, if any, about the damage to their relations with those in the Gulf that they had relations with? And I'm talking very specifically here about Qatar and, to a lesser degree, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, there have been moderate elements within the regime. I think they did not favor this type of retaliation. But right now, as I said, in their understanding, this is an existential war. And something we should understand about Islamic Republic is that their political survival, their survival is their priority, and it's based on political strategy. It is not based on the economic or international costs it could bring. I think they are willing to pay any costs whatsoever to stay in power. They're different from other autocratic regimes that economic growth is a pillar of support for them and survival. Economic growth, prosperity, good relations with neighbor, they would do these things for their survival. But if their survival in their understanding comes to that they have to just attack everyone around and fight this fight, they are willing to give this
Understood.
cost. After the war stops, I think then after a while, we could see different factions playing their games against each other. So we could see those factions coming out later, but I don't think at the moment we would see much from them.
But not at this point. Gotcha. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.